Your life is now. In the song you just heard by John Cougar Mellencamp, in the photojournal of my life. Life can change in an instant. And as you saw on the photos on the screen, they were all photos before the wheelchair became a part of my life. I never dreamed I'd be here speaking with you today. And I never thought my life would change in an instant either. We all think it's not going to happen to us. But deep inside, we know it can. One slip, one fall, one large bump on the head, one important phone call from a doctor with the results of a biopsy or a blood test or an MRI or an X-ray, and suddenly your life has changed in an instant. I'm here as an advocate of your industry. I don't sell DI, but I'm here to share a story and to help you understand the importance of disability income insurance from a claimant's perspective, and maybe you just haven't heard from a claimant before. Many of you are new agents here and maybe have not sold your first DI policy, but then there's the veterans here, and they know when they get that phone call from the family member that says that claimant appreciates the financial advice that was given to them to purchase a disability income insurance. I call it income protection. And I wonder how many people in this room actually have had that call from the family members thanking them for making the important conversation to sell that policy and to protect that family. Someday that time will come if you've been in the industry long enough. So I'm going to take you on a ride. It's the truth from what I know. It's the passion and conviction that maybe has never been told to you before from a perspective of someone who has a life-changing event. Disability insurance, sell it with conviction. To what extent are you currently selling with passion, with purpose? To what extent are you leading the conversation with disability income insurance, the protection of their income versus life insurance? Let me take you on a quick journey and help you understand from where I come. From where I come is a time in my life. It's now been 15 years. The date was June 13th, 1998. It was my third wedding anniversary. And on the screen, you're seeing a bicycle trail, the headlines from the newspaper, and my crushed bicycle helmet, to give you a couple of hints. This was a beautiful day, a custom day for a bicycle ride. Caribbean blue sky, no storm, no rain, no threat of any danger. My husband and I took a bike ride, and we rode to our favorite bike trail in Granville, Ohio, near where we live. We were celebrating our love. It was just the two of us. We were talking, we were laughing, we were contemplating the last 3 years of our marriage, riding side by side on the bike trail on the way to a small ice cream store where there we were going to get our ice cream cone for a treat. While we were riding together, suddenly my husband heard what he thought was a gunshot. It got his attention and he slowed down behind me. At that point, I was in front of him as I was on the trail, and I could hear him from behind me yelling, "Look over there, something's falling, stop!" What he had seen was a tree halfway down, and literally in an instant, I was crushed by a 7,000-pound tree, followed by the live power electric lines. Yes, in an instant, my life changed. It was a very difficult situation. I was knocked unconscious, totally cold, laying under an 80-foot-tall tree. Mark was by himself, screaming and crying out for someone to help. Finally, another couple came by, jumped off their bikes, and the three of them got the leverage on that limb that had pinned me and lifted it gently and slid me out from under that limb. I was laying on the bike trail, and that's when I woke up. I could see my husband looking over me, and all I could say was, "What happened? What? A tree fell? Why? Why would a tree fall? I mean, there is no explanation, folks. It just fell. It was just one of those things. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The life flight helicopter came. I was put on a stretcher and an oxygen mask on my face and a neck brace. And I was flown off by helicopter to the emergency room in downtown Columbus, where I was met by dozens and dozens of doctors. I had 4.5 hours of surgery. I woke up really early Sunday morning, and Mark, my husband, was at my bedside. That Sunday morning, the questions that I had were very serious in nature. I had to ask, what did they do? What did they find? What happened? Mark proceeded to tell me that I had a spinal cord injury. Those are heavy words on a Sunday morning to hear. I don't know what you know about spinal cord injuries, but there's no cure at this point. This is as good as it gets. And for me to face the wheelchair for the first time was a very, very depressing situation. I spent 5 days in intensive care. Then I was transported by ambulance to The Ohio State University to the rehabilitation center at Dodd Hall. I spent 5 weeks, the summer of '98, trying to cope with my new body, trying to learn how to get dressed, how to transfer in a wheelchair, how to be mobile. I then came home. I came home in the summer after a grueling time at Dodd Hall. We pulled into the garage, and that's when I saw my bicycle. Kind of looked like a pretzel had gotten twisted around with all the frame that had been bent by the impact of that tree. And then I saw my bike helmet. Take a look at that helmet. That helmet saved my head from brain injury. I had no brain injury. I'm so fortunate I was wearing that helmet that day I was on the bike trail. I never rode a bike without that helmet. And that day, that helmet saved me from brain injury or sudden death. Can you imagine a 7,000-pound tree falling on you with part of you being your head? That helmet saved my life. But here's the analogy for you. That disability income insurance was as important to me as that helmet because it too saved my life from financial ruin. The analogy is just as strong. I would not be here today if I had no income protection, no monthly benefit from my income, from my disability income insurance policy. And I'm a strong believer in that policy. The helmet analogy can be used as you're talking to others. Meet my husband, Mark, later. If I had a way to clone him, ladies, I would. I mean, he is a prince. He's the kind of guy that was there every day in the hospital, taking good care of me. He was in sales, commission sales at the time. His sales plummeted. What had happened to his income? Mine was zero. It was flat, and his started to decline very quickly because he was with me in the hospital every day for the 6-week period. His boss understood and told him to take good care of me. You know, with 2 incomes, with one of them gone and one of them jeopardized, our family dynamics were different. I'm wondering about you. Do you depend on 2 incomes with your household? Or is it just the 1 income? Are there family members? Look at those prospects. Look at those clients that you have. You know, the likelihood of having more survival financially when there's 2 incomes is greater because the one who had the disability has no income and has hopefully a policy to replace some of it. The surviving spouse without the disability has that ability to work a little harder, maybe take on a second job, and maybe delay their retirement to help in that survivalship. But there's a different scenario if it's a 1-income family, folks. There's nothing else out there on the market that's going to protect that income. And then when I met with my doctor at Ohio State University and he counseled with Mark and I, he said, Rosemarie, most of the marriages of couples where a spinal cord injury has affected their lives. They end in divorce. That's the reality, folks. After a disability, not only is the body affected or the mind affected, but the whole dynamics of the marriage is affected, and the way that we interact and the way my disability affects us in an intimacy in a family relationship. What would life be like for you if suddenly your spouse or significant other left the relationship and left you by yourself? That man never wavered, never gave me any sense of doubt that he was going to be there for me. It's because of him and the support that he gave me that I was able to continue for 2 years of physical and occupational therapy. It was like a part-time job for me, 3 days a week. That was my recovery period. I had a speaking business. I had a training business. I had a consulting business prior to my injury. I was never speaking about disability income insurance. At that time, I was speaking about being a better public speaker. You see, my history. I had taught at Ohio State University for 11 years. I taught public speaking. I left the university in January of 1997 to go full-time into my speaking and training and consulting business. Now, mind you, at The Ohio State University, I had a disability income insurance policy through the university. It was through the Ohio State Teachers Retirement System. Now, that disability income insurance policy followed me after I left Ohio State to start my own business. It's followed me for a 2-year period so that my new business was insured while I worked as a private enterprise. What's the odds of having this disability during that 2-year period? Well, in my case, 100%. I was injured 1.5 years after I left the university. Now, had I gotten some conversations with some agents after I left the university to have my own individual disability income insurance policy in effect? Absolutely. So I was prepared to purchase my first individual DI policy around the 2nd anniversary of leaving the university. That was how important disability insurance was to me in my advanced planning as a business owner. When I went to my physical exam not too long ago, my doctor asked me, "When did you have your last tetanus shot?" Now, all of you have that same question the next time you have your physical. I hope you keep records, and I hope your doctor does too. If you're like me, you don't like shots. I'm really afraid of any needles in my arm. And so I'll do anything not to have another tetanus shot. Make sure it's lasting. Do you all know how long a tetanus shot lasts? What's the inoculation period? It's 10 years. We don't have to get another one for another 10 years. Well, here's the analogy for disability insurance, for income protection. If indeed your prospects will get an immunization for tetanus because they don't want a lockjaw, they don't want a disease that causes spasms and causes their jaw not to be able to move so they can't eat and swallow, I mean, that's the seriousness of tetanus. If indeed they would get their shot so that they wouldn't have tetanus, can you make that switch and that analogy in your sales presentation to use that as leverage to talk about another way to insure your future? Like a tetanus shot, insure your future, get a disability income insurance policy. We do other things to protect our risk. We wear seat belts when we're driving cars. We wear helmets when we ride motorcycles. We may wear elbow guards or wrist guards or knee pads on other sporting events. Maybe you can bring that discussion up with the prospect to talk about some of the other things they do to present in their lives a limited risk and liability in their future. DI, I found, is in this industry the most undersold product. And it caused me to think as an outsider, why is it that disability insurance isn't so popular? And so in the last decade, I have been speaking to agencies, to organizations, to corporations, and interviewing them and saying, why do you think I've also been studying textbooks. I've been studying training manuals. I've been studying the literature. And here's what I think the truth is. The truth is, when you were hired at an insurance company, were you trained to sell disability income insurance? I think that's where we need to start. I think when you look at the company that you work for, that Mass Mutual needs to look at their training on new agents to do a wonderful job and to make that analogy of the importance of disability insurance comparative to life insurance. I think you all know the data. The likelihood of anyone dying this year, 2013, it's much greater than the likelihood of anyone dying in a given year. So when you have life insurance, you're probably not going to be using it this year. But when you have income protection, the likelihood is much greater that a disability could happen. You know, disability insurance has a lot of what ifs, and it's a little harder to explain to the prospect. You have to look at their occupation, you have to look at their income, and you have to look at their pre-existing health conditions. It takes a little more to underwrite it. It takes a little longer possibly for the process. So I understand fully as agents that maybe you have just decided as a career strategy that DI wasn't going to be a part of your plan. I'd like to suggest to you thinking again about disability insurance and making it a part of your strategy. Even though it may take a little more time to ask a few questions, I think it's going to be well worth it as you use this tool to build your practice on disability insurance, not just on life insurance, and move forward. As I look at disability income insurance, I also looked at some of the data. Why is it that it is more complicated to explain? Take a look at your application, and here's my challenge to you. I'm going to make a prediction in this audience that not 100% of you have your own disability income insurance policy. I don't want to raise hands, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but my guess is that there is a percentage here that doesn't have a policy. You probably all have access to an application and to a very good pen that you can start filling your name in on that application. That's my challenge to you. In order to understand the application, go home and fill one out on yourself and go forward and submit your own application to find out how easy it is. And maybe you'll even get a special discount being an agent here in the company. The LIMRA organization in 2009 did a study with individual agents and found the following reasons. You know, when you go on your prospects' appointments, they oftentimes don't ask you to give them a DI quote. They're not asking for it. They're talking about other products. Also, because of the length of the underwriting process, that has been a reason for agents not to sell DI. Or maybe they've never been approached by a carrier, or perhaps they don't offer it as a primary product. Well, of course, here at Mass Mutual, it is a primary product. And then sometimes the clients are referred to another professional, a financial planner, to handle that part of the business. So if those are the reasons that agents weren't selling it, let's take a look at the total data just from Mass Mutual. And I was surprised and shocked. And I hope you understand this is the first time this information has been shared. What do you think the answer to this question is? Of all the field sales in this company, what percent of the total field actually sells a DI policy? Wow. That's all? There's a lot of room for improvement. That means 61% of the field is not even selling DI. There's room for opportunity here in this company. All right, what percent of the field actually has their own policy in place? You got a mental answer? Wow. That means if this is an average of the population, 32% of you will have a policy on yourself. This is data as of April of this year. That's kind of embarrassing. I mean, could you... Could you just imagine your embarrassment when you're sitting across the kitchen table from a prospect with an application for a DI policy and they go, "When did you buy yours?" "I haven't bought mine yet." How could you possibly face that prospect without having your own? If you don't believe in it yourself, if you're not convicted enough to have your own policy, which you can write on yourself and have the best value ever in the insurance industry, how could you possibly even think of making an appointment next week? You need to take care of your own business, your own house first, to take care of this. How have you performed as a company in DI sales? Well, obviously, you know some of that answer. Since 2008, it's really been declining or flat. Since this campaign has picked up, though, in January of 2013, it's already picking up, folks. The word is out. This DI drive is cooking, and the campaign is in full force. The kickoff has had a soft opening, and then this weekend, here at the Leaders Conference, it's kicking up to full speed. All right, how have the agents performed in DI sales? The agents actually are selling 73% of the DI policies. The career brokers are selling about 27%. So the agents are far surpassing the brokers in DI sales here at MassMutual. How have you been performing? I thought this was interesting. Only 10% of the field force, which is about 500 of the agents, account for 74% of the total DI sales. So what happened to the other 90%? They're not in a very good stead here. And we look at the agencies. Take half, or about 44 of the agencies, have fewer than a third of their agents selling DI. So we have a lot of opportunity, a lot of growth potential in looking at the numbers. The numbers are now being tracked, by the way. Your numbers for the next year and the following years through this campaign of December 2016 are being carefully watched by management. 30% of the agents in their first 4 years. So what we're finding is the new agents from year 1 to 4, only 30% of them were selling DI policies. And when you look overall at the agents, 65% of them were selling fewer than 5 policies a year. The campaign. You know, when they first told me about this campaign and asked me to get involved, I'm going to be speaking all over the country to 14 agencies between now and March. I'm just delighted to have been selected to help impact. And this is the first kickoff right here for agents to hear me speak. When they first told me the goal of 25% increase by 2016, I said, "Are you kidding? With the data you've shown me, I think you can go to 40%. Come on, what do you think? 40%? Come on." I just have this mental thought that if we all start working on this from all the strategies that MassMutual is having, by looking at the product, by looking at incentives, by looking at support, by looking at training, and by looking at the motivation factor of helping encourage and measuring what is supposed to happen, I believe that we'll have an increase closer to 40%. Here comes the personal side of my story. What did this mean to me? I'd like to share some personal data. On the screen are some of the numbers indicating the expenses that I had after my injury from the hospital bills on. I was at the hospital for 6 weeks. Then later I had a blood clot and went back into the hospital for about another week afterwards. So those are just a total of some of the expenses in my first year. Now, that photograph was taken of me in the swimming pool in my physical therapy. My mom always likes that picture. She goes, "Rosemarie, I love your smile." I got news for you there. That's not a smile. That's a grimace. In this country, about 2 more people are having a spinal cord injury by the time I get off this stage. We've got a lot of people involved in this country. The cost of a spinal cord injury, it's extreme. Depending on the level of injury, my level of injury is a paraplegia in that I can move from the waist down. My paralysis is mostly, from the waist up. My paralysis is mostly from the waist down. But some of the costs are on the screen, including the cost of the wheelchair, all my deductibles and expenses for hospitals and doctors and prescriptions, and also my personal care attendant. Yolanda had to come to my house for the first year. I had to hire her as a personal care attendant just to get me out of bed, just to put my t-shirt on, to get me into the shower. I couldn't even roll on carpet when I came home. I was so weak. I had a neck brace. I had a body brace. I had a wooden transfer board, and I needed her help throughout that year. Now, that was in '98. I got a deal at $10 an hour for her personal care. She was there every weekday to take care of me, to drive me to my physical therapy and to my doctor's appointments, and to do all the things in the house that normally I would have done to take care of it. The cost is heavy in terms of a spinal cord injury, and the cost of any injury is heavy based on the likelihood of a disability. This is a photo of the van that I'm currently driving. It's 130,000 miles now. It's 14 years old. My new van is coming next week. I just bought a Honda Odyssey for $28,000, and then I paid another $25,000 to have it modified as a wheelchair van. Now, you add those together and realize I could have had a Mercedes. But that's the reality. You may be shocked by this, but the cost of the van and the cost of the modification are about the same. So it's like buying two vehicles. But I hope to drive this one for another 130,000 miles so that I can get my value out of it. Yes, it is costly to have a spinal cord injury. It is very costly as we move on in life, and I want to give you some sales tips as I move on. The value. No, I'm not picking up lint from the floor. This is one of my physical therapy exercises. As I remind you of the value of disability income insurance, these are some of the things that just summarize the value to me as a source of income and letting me continue to live a normal life. The photograph is the house I was living in prior to my disability. And yes, I didn't go into my savings account. I kept paying all my bills and my mortgage. I didn't lose the house. I didn't have to borrow money from my family. And I did get to rebuild my life. Here's a photo of my new house. This is a national demonstration home. Without disability income insurance and the monthly benefits, I would never have had the ability to build this house. It is over $1 million home. It is built not only with my private resources, but the resources of over 200 corporate sponsors who have given us products and services, who believe in this national demonstration home that will be opening to the public this coming fall for 30 days with proceeds going to spinal cord research at Ohio State University. Go on our website, udll.com, and you'll see this home, and you'll be able to know more about it through the newsletter and all the photographs there. My husband shared with me what it was like for him to be the sole wage earner. He started his own business at home afterwards because my monthly benefits were like a safety net for him. We didn't have our marriage in trouble, even though we went through lots of marriage counseling. Lots of counseling for a full year because of the depression, both on Mark's side as well as my side. The debts were not overbearing because the income continued to be a part of our lives. So when you think about illnesses and you think of accidents, what is the more likely result of a disability? It is not a tragic accident. It is normally an illness, something like a heart attack or a stroke or cancer, or mental disability. Those are the reasons. In fact, 95% of the disabilities are because of not an accident, but an illness. So make your clients aware of that. So what can you do? You know, Mass Mutual has in place the certificate program. In less than 30 minutes, you can take one of the 6 modules. If you get a score of 80% or greater on the mastery test, you'll actually get a certificate. Go online. You can do it for your mobile device as well as at home on your computer. So far, almost 800 agents have signed up and have the certificate. It'll help you to be a better salesperson and understand this policy a lot better. That's my advice. All of you go get your certificate. The targeted occupations are medical, they're legal, they're technical. You can go after the medical in their senior year, their residency year, their internship. Go after these occupations as you're looking at who are your prospects. These will make for the best prospects as you look at their income level and their occupation. Here are some suggestions as you're leading off and closing the sale. Asking them what would they do if their income suddenly stopped. Have you planned for your future? Have you ever thought what would happen? Where would your income come from? You're having the sale, look at your existing client base and contact those in your database without DI. Get those in your agency to help you identify the existing clients that have no DI policy and start there. They're already your trusted clients. Move them into prospects. Some other suggestions: share the disability statistics that you can find on the internet. Connect emotions to the information and share my story and other stories about families that you've helped in selling policies. And ask the client to share a story about someone they've known that has had a disability. Other tips: ask them about their financial security and what they're going to do should it all fall apart. They can't build their retirement without income. Use my tetanus shot analogy or my bike helmet analogy and build a persuasive, logical argument. Looking at your contract, take a look at it when you get home this week and look at it, know the terminology, understand it well, and know the strengths and weaknesses of what you're presenting, and the jargon needs to be explained. You're going to have objections. These are common. They're going to be resistance points where they're going to pull back and say, I can't afford a DI policy. These are common objections. Be ready to have an answer in terms of, could you afford to live without it? If you can't live now on your own income stream, what would happen if it disappeared? How could you possibly live without any income? And that's the logical argument in terms of the real expense leading to a financial ruin as a result of not having any income. If you think you can't afford it now, wait till the disability. The other is they'll tell you they have a disability insurance policy at work. Ask them to research that through their human resources department. Oftentimes they may have a group policy, but they have a big gap and they need another individual DI policy to cover that gap. You got to call clients. You got to make appointments. That's what it's about. It takes lots of hard work. You're all in sales. And as you work in sales, you've got to look at this as a possibility. I've done some hard work to be where I am today, physically and mentally and in my career. I want to share and close today with a little demonstration for you to see. I want you to go home and tell your friends you saw a speaker who could walk or talk. I want you to know thank you. Thank you. It's important for you to know that disability income insurance helped me to get back on my feet again. I can take a few steps and walk away from that wheelchair. That's obvious. But my disability is still here. I still have a spinal cord injury. I can leave the wheelchair behind. But the reality is the same. The disability continues through your lifetime after that life-changing event. You got to sell it with conviction, with passion, with purpose to those you serve now and to those who need to be served. Disability income insurance, you can't live without it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.